You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds, the owner of Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds & Klein Appraisal, and your host of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Remember that little thing in Seattle that happened over the summer called CHOP, formerly known as CHAZ? Well, big lawsuit happening, and it is moving forward. U.S. District Court judge in Western Washington said, yep, you business owners and you homeowners, you can continue suing the city of Seattle. It's going to be a big one. If they can actually prove what they're talking about proving, there could be some big multi-million-dollar payouts, especially if it becomes class action, if it gets to that level. This is big. So let's jump on in, see what we've got. Here's a news source that I read a fair amount, but I don't usually put in my podcast because it's kind of small, and it also has kind of a really narrow field of news view. But for our purposes in this podcast, it's perfect. It's from the Capitol Hill Seattle Block. Community news for all the Hill. Lawsuit over Capitol Hill protest zone can move forward. City of Seattle loses important first round in CHOP legal battle. Imagine that. Imagine the city of Seattle actually having some legal liability when they tell the police department to basically clear out of their precinct. We're going to go into a lawless zone that initially we're going to call the Summer of Love and a block party, but it's going to devolve. And we all know what it devolved into. I mean, it was just inevitable. Even people in here in Seattle are like, what? What are you people doing? A block party and the Summer of Love? Oh, this is going to turn out great. And it did, right? Train wreck. Just Seattle, train wreck. Chop. That's what happened. Let's keep reading here. It's so easy just to make fun of CHOP. A lawsuit brought by a collection of 12th Avenue real estate developers. Now, 12th Avenue is one of the avenues. CHOP started at about 10th and goes to about 15th, so like a 5-block radius. And it's actually really 10th, 11th, 12th. That's really about all that CHOP as far as the east-west goes, and as far as the north-south, it went another couple of blocks, so it's like a 6 blocks radius. Lawsuit brought about by a collection of 12th Avenue real estate developers, small businesses, and residents against the city of Seattle and Mayor Jenny Durkan over the handling of this summer's CHOP Capitol Hill occupied protest can now move forward, a federal judge ruled last Friday. Judge Thomas S. Zille of the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Washington denied the city's motion to dismiss the case, ruling in favor of 3 of the 4 claims against City Hall, alleging that city leaders violated property rights by allowing a dangerous protest and encampment to continue for weeks. And you can watch it kind of unfold on my YouTube channel right here where you're probably paying attention, may or may not be paying attention. But I went down there, and that's one of the major reasons that I kind of started doing this daily podcast is so much of the news and information that I was seeing out there, not only on the coronavirus, but also on things happening in Seattle, didn't match up. The major news story narrative didn't match up to what I was seeing and hearing, and then what I was experiencing firsthand covering CHOP and firsthand experiencing going down to Portland. They were not predominantly peaceful protesters. It's just stuff going wildly sideways, mainly at CHOP. Now, initially, when this whole thing kind of started going down, I think there were a lot of peaceful protests, and I'm okay with that. But when they devolve into looting stores and gunfire and riots, not okay with that. That's where I kind of draw the line. Pro-business guy, like pro-business. It's what I do. And then I talk about it. I talk about stuff happening in my backyard in Seattle. And guess what? Seattle throws me storyline after storyline after storyline. I've always got a handful of good stories going on, some better than others, but this is a pretty good one. City of Seattle being sued by businesses in the CHOP. In their complaint, the plaintiffs claimed the city had violated property rights, violated due process rights by allowing a dangerous situation around the protest zone to fester, and failed to provide equal protection to the businesses and residents near the CHOP zone. The judge upheld each of the allegations, but the last saying the plaintiffs could not establish that the city had favored the beliefs of the protesters over the viewpoints of the plaintiffs. All right. Got to throw one of them out, right? You got 4 major complaints. Let's toss out that one. That's the weakest one. In denying the city's effort to dismiss the case, Zille's decision kicks the legal process into a new gear in complicated proceedings that are expected to involve huge amounts of internal city documents and months of legal back and forth over evidence. He also left open the possibility the case could become a class action lawsuit. That is huge. Class action lawsuit, big numbers. What that means is big payouts on the other end if this thing goes through in a class action lawsuit direction, opening the door to a much larger proof of plaintiffs against the city. CHS reported earlier this month on the legal process for people to join the lawsuit as the sides in the case agreed on a February deadline, setting up a possible trial date in 2022. 1 year and 7 months from the date Mayor Durkan ordered the camp raided and swept. I'm old. My eyesight has never been good. I've had contacts since 3rd grade. Still can't read all that well, and sometimes it's just even worse. So let's go back and read that for 1 second. 1 year and 7 months from the day Mayor Durkan ordered the camp raided and swept, and that was July 1st, I believe, and I was there. That was a trip watching that happen from the front lines. From its formation and the temporary exit of police from the East Precinct building and the barriers at 12th and Pine on June 8th. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but literally some genius, it's probably the mayor, told Seattle Department of Transportation to bring in these monstrous concrete barriers. Let's just give them their own little fiefdom. Let's give them their own little ability to block off trafficked streets. These are streets in a dense urban setting where cars go through. All of a sudden, you've got concrete barricades. What do the Occupy protesters of CHOP do? That's right, they occupy it. They quadrant off their exterior. They create their own little boundaries. And it was alleged that they had guns. And it was alleged initially, and I never saw this, that they had guards at the checkpoints. I had people telling me that when they found out that I was going to CHOP, they won't let you in. They're not going to let you in. And I was like, this is just a city neighborhood. There's no way to really quadrant it off. There's no way to truly block it off. And yes, Antifa did have people that were kind of checking out what was going on, because we were there one morning very early, around 5 a.m., because we had kind of intel. We had some word from Seattle police that something was going down, and it did go down not the way we wanted it. But you can see that on our YouTube channel. Got a video there where I kind of get interrogated by a kid on a bicycle. Yeah, and that was Antifa, right? Crazy. So the CHOP camp was celebrated as a center of protest and also for its arts and community, even though there were reports of open carry enthusiasts joining the crowds. Open carry enthusiasts. That's a really nice way of putting it. And I remember I was videoing in the garden area of CHOP, and there was some commotion up near the police station. I was like, what's that all about? Like 15 years later, this kind of big, tall dude, he goes into his tent, and I watched him. He was probably, I'm guessing, 20, 25 feet away from me, and I watched him, and I know my eyesight isn't that great, but when you see a big automatic-looking assault gun go into a tent, you're like, oh yeah, that's a gun. That's what he was doing. He was putting some kind of assault rifle. I'm not an expert in munitions, but I mean, it was a big gun, and he was putting that back in his tent for safekeeping. But what had happened is the people who were armed had been notified. Yep, you got a situation up there by the police station, which is unoccupied. You better go take care of it. And so what they do is they just walk up there with guns and square away whatever and move on. And then you go put your gun back in your tent and CHOP, because that's what you're doing. You're living in CHOP. You're living in a community park. And that's acceptable to the city of Seattle. Oh, but wait, it's not. That's why city of Seattle is getting sued. That's what's going on. Reports of open carry enthusiasts joining the crowds and a regular presence of armed sentries posted around the area as part of camp security. Yep. The city worked out a new layout plan with protesters to better open the area to traffic and emergency vehicles. So initially, when the Seattle Department of Transportation put these barricades in CHOP, they didn't set them up right. And the city had to come back and go, okay, yeah, we know you're doing your own encampment thing, but we're going to move this around a little bit so we can actually get an ambulance in case, I don't know, if somebody gets shot. Just, let's say figuratively, that might happen. Ambulance, getting into a street area that is blocked off with concrete barriers. That makes it difficult. Kind of eliminates some of the city's ability to provide adequate civil services, doesn't it? Boy, if that happened, could people sue? Here's where we are. Meanwhile, there was growing unease about Seattle Police's limited presence in the zone around 11th and Pine and Cal Anderson Park, which is still shut down. Cal Anderson Park has been just a nightmare, and it's still shut down, and the city isn't allowing people in there because it's just a mess. How many people have we had die there? I don't know. It's a number now. And growing criticism over the camp's purpose of occupying the area, and Seattle People's Precinct was overtaking greater Black Lives Matter goals. Hear that all the time. It's like, hey, wait a minute. What about the whole Black Lives Matter thing? It's just being overrun by nut jobs at CHOP. That was the narrative. Gunfire and deadly shootings took a terrible toll. 19-year-old Renton High student Lorenzo Anderson was shot and killed. Just over a week later, 16-year-old Antonio Mays Jr. was gunned down, and another young teen was shot on the edges of the protest camp. Horrible. You've got a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old that are no longer with us, and that could have been prevented, but it wasn't. It was allowed to happen in CHOP. CHS first reported in late June while CHOP was still active in the lawsuit led by Capitol Hill-based developers Hunters Capital, seeking to be determined financial damages for a group of businesses in the Pike Pine and 12th Avenue areas around CHOP. The list of plaintiffs has grown. It includes developers Hunters Capital, Redside Partners, and Madrona Real Estate Businesses Cafe. So you got three real estate people: Hunters Capital, Redside Partners, and Madrona Real Estate. The only name I know that from there is Madrona Real Estate, and I don't know if I really know that or if just one of those things where maybe don't know. Businesses Cafe Argento, Northwest Liquor, Bergman's Lock and Key, Car Tender got rocked. That was super unfortunate. They basically had people breaking in and lighting stuff on fire. They were defending themselves. They apprehended one guy, but had to let him go, and an angry mob came along. It was just that kind of social experiment gone sideways in CHOP. So, Cartender, Tattoos and Fortune, Sage Physical Therapy, Richmark Label, and property owners, including Onks Homeowners Association. So there's condos right there. I remember one of the either apartment or a condo, I would walk by the security guard and go, yeah, you are here because we are in the middle of a nightmare, of a civic nightmare. Brutal. 12th and Pike Sway and Cake Boutique and Nagel's Cure Cocktail Bar joined the roster. This is not a step our clients have taken lightly, lawyers at the firm Calfo Eeks told media at the time. The rights of free speech and assembly are enshrined in our constitutional tradition, and our clients support protesters' right to bring issues such as systemic racism and police brutality towards African Americans to the forefront of the national consciousness. Madrona's Brad Augustine told CHS the point of the lawsuit is the little guy. This is 100% about the little businesses on the Hill. We are seeing tenants not renew leases because they don't want to be in Pine Pike, Augustine said in June. They still don't want to be in Pine Pike come October. Not a desirable location to be because you just don't know. Is it kind of washed over? Yeah, but the park is still closed. And it's like, this was the scene of just not a lot of good stuff. The city should not allow the right to peacefully protest and demand systemic change to manifest itself in acts of violence, harassment, excessive noise, and property damage. A statement from Hunters Capital read as the Capitol Hill-based firm also noted its support for the Black Lives Matter movement. All right, so they're saying, okay, we support you and your right for freedom of speech, but when it ends up and when it evolves into violence, harassment, excessive noise, and property damage, we are a no-go. All right, at its core, the case posts an important question for modern cities in America. Can you sue City Hall over protest inaction? Yeah, looks that way. City of Seattle or Washington federal court says, yep, we can. With the Seattle case moving forward, the legal repercussions of CHOP will continue with the city for months and possibly years. Other cities dealing with waves of protest will also be watching and weighing their own responses to free speech and demonstration. How much do you think Mayor Durkan is going to regret on national television telling, I believe, was it Fox News, telling Fox News this could be the summer of love? How many times are you going to see that clip? That's our mayor. That was her comment. It went south on her. And she's going to have to live with that. I mean, at the beginning, I think everybody was like, oh, this is, if you're into that kind of thing, this is the summer of love. We're going to have these peaceful protests, big block party, just this collaboration. We're going to make some food. We're going to plant some plants on top of the grass in this really good ecosystem. We're going to have a free, clean shoot-up range over here. We're just going to all take care of each other. We're going to have nightly discussions, open-air discussions in the park. Mind you, this is all taking place in a public park, and you've got, several hundred people living there in tents. You've got no police presence. You've got no ability for the city to come in because they can't get their cars in. Recipe for disaster. Rest of the world saw it, and they're all kind of like, yeah, I told you. What are you guys doing? So I get hammered on a lot for just being a Seattle guy, and what's his story? Is he protecting Seattle? No, I'm just showing you news stories that are happening here because we've got just so many crazy storylines going on that somebody in their right mind, not with normal media, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox, somebody along those lines needs to be sharing these stories. I look around and go, oh, why not me? And so I just kind of do it. Plus, I'm the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, so I tend to focus on stories that have to do with things impacting real estate. And guess what? Daily life impacts real estate a lot because it has to do with the trends of where people are moving away from CHOP, where people are not having much luck sell homes right in CHOP. Outside of CHOP, where you don't have that influence, guess what? Things are cranking in Seattle. Nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to hear that Seattle is just this refuse of short sales and foreclosures. They want to see Seattle turn out to be CHOP. I mean, they don't want to see Seattle turn out to be CHOP. They want to see Seattle turn out into the next Detroit. That is not happening, but I think a lot of people are hoping that will happen because they see the direct correlation between what our government is doing and how it should end up. Instead, Seattle has some of the highest appreciation in the United States. That's what's going on. So that's this weird narrative between me, the real estate guy, and me, the real estate guy, watching stuff happen like CHOP. Like, oh, that's weird. Why is that? Why are we allowing that to happen? Why are we defunding the police? Why are we doing this crazy stuff? Why are we allowing homelessness to take over our parks? Why do we have a metal shop being operated in the middle of the night in one of our parks? I don't know. I'm going to cover it. Do I have any solutions? I have ideas, but for a lot of this stuff, this is civic-based stuff. City leadership has to figure it out. And guess what city leadership is doing right now? That's right, nothing. They're nothing. They're defending themselves in a lawsuit against the Summer of Love. Seattle also much measure how it continues. That's a typo in there. Seattle has also much to measure how it continues to respond to ongoing protests and the presence of homelessness activists and new encampments around Cal Anderson Park. That stuff is still going on. We're in October, and this kind of went down in June. You'll see, I did a podcast, I think last week, 26 people arrested. They are arresting people on a more frequent basis now, but I don't know if those are being prosecuted anymore. I see one or two news stories around that are like, yeah, they're being prosecuted for this, this, and this. Okay, good. Throw the book at them so that people don't get the wrong idea that you can come to Seattle and just willy-nilly throw Molotov cocktails into businesses and to police stations and try and concrete the doors shut. You can't do that. That doesn't work. That's a no-go. So Judges out there, you guys need to just throw the book at these people, make examples of them, and guess what? This becomes a no-go for other protesters to go down these avenues of violence and civil disobedience. So that is really about it on the continuance of this lawsuit. But there's been also a number of other small businesses in the area that have kind of piggybacked on this lawsuit. I've talked to a couple of them, and they are pissed off that their businesses were impacted in the way they were. They didn't choose to have CHOP come to them. It just came. And guess what? The city said, we're just going to be, in defense of peaceful protesting, we're just going to allow this to happen. And it went wildly sideways. We all know how it ended. And these businesses are suing. And I think they have a pretty good chance of winning. How much will they win? I don't know. But we're going to find out. We're going to find out some of the nitty-gritty detail of what actually went down with CHOP. And everybody kind of knows the story of now the city of Seattle has hired a former pimp to be the city's liaison with a lot of these groups that are out there. I mean, this is just what we've got kind of going on. This is what these are, I get asked in kind of some of the live stream stuff. And when I'm sitting down doing premieres, I did one this morning, people are asking me, what's the city of Seattle doing to kind of rectify some of this stuff? And all I could think of is, well, we hired Gorgeous Dre. He's a former pimp, and he's going to de-escalate the city from violence. That's what we've got going on. That's worse than nothing to me. This guy has no proven ability for what the city is spending $150,000 in a year on. If he had background, if he had education, if he had a degree, if he had a job that showed me he could do these things, I'd be with the city of Seattle. Okay, all right, let's give this guy a chance. Everybody makes mistakes early in life. Maybe he's worked his way back up into normal society and he's out of that whole crime thing of being a pimp. Let's give him that chance. But I don't see anything on paper that leads me to believe that he has any skill set whatsoever. And the reason I bring that up is because I am a small business owner. If you have the correct license and if I check you out and you're okay, then I'm probably going to hire you. But if I don't see that you are right for the job, if I don't see that you have the right credentials for the job, that's how I make my decisions. So when I bring you this information of what we've got going on here in Seattle, it flies in the face of what a normal business owner would do. And guess what? That's because leadership in Seattle has never owned a business. I don't know if anybody on the city council has owned a business. If they have, they're certainly not good at it because of the way that their decisions kind of go towards business. And business is leaving in droves from Seattle. They're coming to neighboring suburbs, because guess what? Some of the suburbs around Seattle, they're pretty dynamite as well. Maybe dynamite isn't the right word in this violent and whatever age. Some of the suburbs around Seattle, they're pretty strong, and guess what? They don't have the influence that the Summer of Love had. They just don't. Even though we're close to downtown Seattle and we're close to the city of Seattle, here in Bellevue, we're not down with the stuff going on down there. We like to go visit. Everybody likes to go to the Space Needle. Everybody loves to go to the pier. Everybody loves to go to, the old World Fair kind of stuff. That's cool. But even now, Seattle's become so grungy in a lot of those areas that unless you're a thrill seeker, you're not going there. Of which I am a little bit of a thrill seeker. So we're going to shoot some videos soon on Pioneer Square. We're going to shoot some videos on 3rd Avenue. We're going to shoot some videos of parks. Now you might think, boy, that is really thrill seeking, Sean. You're going to go to a Seattle City Park? Yep. The problem is they're overrun with homeless encampments. We're going to go see what that looks like. We're going to go try and find the actual metal shop being run in an area that Seattle Parks Department maintains, and we will also report on anything going on in there. Denny Park, another big park here in Seattle that the city, right before a news story happened, the city went and picked up 200 hypodermic needles. Those are some excellent things going on here in Seattle. That's what we're going to cover. All right. I was just waving to the DoorDash guy because my lunch is here. So I am going to go for now, but I've got a couple more podcasts I'm going to do today. So thank you so much for tuning in, and really appreciate it. Love to have you subscribe if you want to. If not, thanks for tuning in today, and share this content. I don't have the budget of CBS, ABC, or NBC, or CNN, or Fox Media, so the best way you can get this word out if you think this is important stuff is to share it with your friends and family. All right, that's it for me. Thanks again. I'm out. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.